Figure out, envision what the end looks like. What matters most to you? What is success? What does that look like? What does it feel like? Go there, be there, and then come back to where you are. So that's your point X, if you like, where kind of X marks the spot where the treasure is. Figure out what you want. What do you want this to be like? What do you want it to feel like? What kind of experiences do you want? What kind of money do you need for that to work? So what's your number? Yeah. Get all of that dialed in, then come back to where you are, your point A. And now you have A to X, a gap appears. And the job then is to learn how to close the gap. And that's where your strategy comes from. The being at the end of the journey, which is really just a horizon, it always moves, gives you a true north. It gives you something to aim at and gives you direction. And where you are gives you a starting point. And then we build our, sorry for mixing metaphors, but we build our kind of yellow brick road, brick by brick. So strategically, you know where you're going, you know why it matters. If you're doing this as a business, you know why that matters to your market, because you need that as well. And now you've got a place to go and something to get, and you begin the journey in the right direction instead of heading off in the wrong direction, which is what most people do. Because again, they just try and monetize their skills and try and earn money and replace the job that they've come from, which is the way of pain for most people.
You mentioned helping businesses get closer to what matters most. You probably already touched it, but can you elaborate more on what this means and how it shapes your coaching strategy?
Yeah, that was a revelation that both Simon and I about 5-6 years ago. We started talking because we're called success engineers, and he's the success guy and I'm the engineer. That's where that came from. So we talked about engineering success. So instead of flapping around and flailing around and trying to figure out and just do stuff and throw stuff at a wall and see if you can make progress, actually engineer the process so that if you do something, it tends to work. That's where that came from. Yeah, it's an interesting kind of conundrum because we talk about success, but of course, my definition of success is not your definition of success. So we came up with the idea of what matters most because ultimately, and that it came from the title of a book, which was actually bizarrely about time management. And the book was literally called What Matters Most. I hijacked it from there because I thought, God, actually, there's a thing. What somebody's definition of success is ultimately what matters most to them. Because what matters most tends to be what we focus on and what we do. Quite often, sometimes we ignore it. So how would it be if we could talk about the process instead of achieving success as almost like it was a solitary act, something that just happens in the moment? Why don't we talk about the progress that people make towards the things that matter to them? So we now talk about getting closer to what actually matters most to you. That's it. So our definition of success, my definition of success is the gradual, steady progress in the direction of your goals, your ambitions, your dreams, what matters most. And if that helps explain it, that's what I mean by it. And for me, that's what success is. Success isn't hitting a target. Success is the steady progress in the direction that you want. And where in the distance lies all of the things that make you happy, that make you fulfilled, that give you purpose.
Can you also explain us the concept of elusive obvious and provide examples on how it's worked or you worked with some businesses?
I'll give you a conceptual one if that's okay. The elusive obvious is it's like your nose. You don't notice your nose until somebody points it out and you look at it with your eyes and you go, oh, and there it is. You never notice it, but it's in front of you. Yeah. The elusive obvious is something that is elusive that you're actively looking for. It's not a blind spot. Blind spots you don't see. The elusive obvious is something that you are looking for but can't find. But once it's pointed out, it's obvious because there it is in plain sight. You couldn't register it, but there it was, like your nose. So an example of this that I give is a little story about a couple of young fish swimming upstream on a nice, bright, sunny day, having a great time chatting away. And eventually they pass by an old, wizened fish swimming downstream. And he looks at the two fish and he says, morning, boys. Lovely day, isn't it? How's the water? After about a couple of minutes, they're very confused. And after a couple of minutes, one of the young fish turns to the other and says, what the hell's water? When you're in an environment that you get used to, it becomes very difficult to identify things that you normalize around you, and you miss things that are obvious as a result. So in this tale, obviously, there's never been a situation where the young fish had to examine the environment they were in and realize and get a definition of what water is. So they literally didn't know. And this is very typical of us. We see things, but we don't really see them. We look for solutions that are under our noses, but we don't see them. And we need an outside perspective to help us see the obvious thing that has hitherto been elusive, hence elusive obvious. Coca-Cola got a great expression. You can't read the label from inside the bottle. You need the outside perspective. That's, for me, that sums up what the elusive obvious is and why coaches are so valuable and why consultants are so valuable.
So you helping people, aspiring entrepreneurs, to see the obvious or to use their own talents or knowledge to create something? Like, why are you using it in business terms?
You're right. So here's an example. This is from a coaching client today in Ireland, as it happens. So he said to me, he's talking about acquiring another business. And I said to him, okay, why do you want to acquire the business? So here's the problem he thinks he's solving. Well, I need to bring in additional business, and this other business I'm looking at has already got a client base. Great. And there's some additional resources there and some other bits and pieces. Great. So the problem that you're trying to solve is increasing your capacity, increasing the amount of business that you're turning over. Yeah. Okay. All right. So have you got your own business to a level where you can run a second business? And he looked at me and went, what do you mean? And I said, okay. So one of the biggest problems and failings I see in small businesses in particular is you've got one arrow and you're trying to hit two bullseyes at the same time. Ain't going to work. Pushing two boulders uphill, pick your analogy. And he went, oh, okay. So what problem should I be trying to solve here? And again, this is not seeing the obvious thing. The obvious thing is that his business needs to be stable and operate with him maybe 20% of his input, not 80% of his input, before he can bring a second business in to solve to enhance the number of clients that he's dealing with. So I said, okay, there's a couple of ways we could go at this, but what is it you're actually trying to do? And he said, I'm trying to I need more income so that I don't work as hard, basically. So you're trying to claw back time. Yeah. So the problem we're trying to solve is that you want to be less involved in the business. Yeah. So why buy another business and create more work for yourself? Why not bring somebody in who acts as a lieutenant or as a second string or a charge hand? This is a big landscape gardening business, turns over a couple of million. And he said, God, this has come up before and I keep ignoring it. And we got into the why he's been avoiding this. And what he did was he blanked the possibility of this, which is an obvious solution, because he doesn't trust himself to hand control over to somebody else, which is very common with small business owners. So he blanked it and he just could, like your nose, he no longer saw it and it was in front of him. And he went, God, you're absolutely right. I need to do this. Okay, so now the problem we're trying to solve is how do we find the right person that can take over some aspects of the business for this man and help him run his business such that he can then hand a bit more control over, learn to step back a little bit, and then if he wants to, go buy another business and bring that in, because that is something he wants to do, and there are other reasons for that. So we learn to solve the right problem by, first of all, establishing what solution he's looking for that has hitherto been obvious, has been elusive, but is now obvious, elusive obvious. And that was the go find and hire somebody that can actually help you and take some of the load off. That's the solution. That's what we need. There's the obvious thing that you couldn't see.
Interesting. Your profile mentions the unique character-led business model. Can you describe what this entails and how it differentiates your coaching from other consultants?
Oh, great. Okay. So yes, absolutely. So character-led business is a thing that we trademarked some time ago because it seemed, again, obvious to us that this is how you run business, but not to most people. So I start with, first of all, a definition of character, because I like the idea of shared language, Emily. So if I say a word or I say a phrase, you understand elusive obvious. What do I mean by that? Character is one of those ones that's that's very easy to misinterpret. So by character, we talk about the outward expression of your identity. So our identity, in very simple terms, there's more to it, obviously, but in very simple terms, our identity is how we see ourselves and how we relate to the world around us and how we think the world relates to us. Largely, it's that. And it's formed from our beliefs and values and our experiences. Character is an outward expression of that. Then you get what most people call mindset, we call mental game, which is the moment to moment decision making and behaviors. Character tends to express itself in characteristics or traits. Mindset is states. And I talk about traits before states. So if you want to look at somebody's character and how they are, and that includes characteristics like their integrity, their courage, their resilience, all of the tenacity, a lot of the big things that drive entrepreneurs to be successful. And you want to see those in action. Generally, you look for the long-term patterns of behavior, not the temporary or moment-to-moment decision making and patterns of behavior. That's mindset. So mindset drives behaviors which create temporary, if you like, or momentary outcomes or results. Let's call them results. Character drives outcomes because that's an over time thing. It's a long-term thing. So we talk about with athletes, Simon does this in his professional career as a sports psych, also with business owners, about situations where you have challenge and you need to develop a characteristic to deal with that, or several characteristics. So it might be that you need to walk away from some business where you are not a good fit. That's integrity. And if you don't do that, you got to work on your integrity. It might be that there's something that you need to do to up your game that scares you. Courage is the capacity to step towards the thing that you're afraid of. Bravery is the absence of fear in our definition. Courage is the ability to step towards the thing you're afraid of while you're still afraid. Yep, courage is a big thing. So you want to develop your courage. So you do things that will help you develop that, because then you become a more courageous business owner and you tend to do things that scare you more regularly and you embrace discomfort and you embrace uncertainty, because they're two of the big things that are very different from standard employment. In employment, you generally feel fairly certain. You generally feel very comfortable, even if you're not comfortable with the job. You know what's coming next. In entrepreneurship, you're at sea constantly. It is uncertain and it is uncomfortable most of the time. So you have to learn to embrace that. And most people have a high intolerance of uncertainty. So how do we deal with that? We don't really become more certain. We develop our conviction. That's levels of courage and levels of clarity and levels of confidence. We become more consistent. There's another characteristic. So we in character-led business talk about building the business owner through building their character, therefore, and as such, building the business as a consequence. Not build the business, build the person. The reality is it's a bit of both. Sometimes you need the challenge of the business to build the character. Sometimes you can get ahead of it and develop yourself before you do the thing. But ultimately, you have to become the person who's capable of doing the thing and then goes and does it. Otherwise, nothing gets done. And that's a character thing. So that's what we mean by character-led business.
How many years the novice can spend to develop like character, and after then the business matching the character with trials and mistakes component?
This is where the CLB, the character-led business methodology, and our kind of brand of coaching can help to collapse time, because we can help people figure this stuff out and again, learn the problem that they're solving, understand the problem they're solving, which is actually the problem here is I'm not consistent enough. It isn't that I need more sales or I need more leads or I need to put my prices up. I'm actually not consistent enough. Therefore, this thing is not happening. Yeah, that might be the issue. Or I need more courage because I know that putting my prices up, I'm undercharging, and putting my prices up scares the hell out of me because I think that I'm going to lose some clients. So we figure out how to help that person take a step towards that thing and do the thing without losing their clients. Yeah. So there's a bit of business mechanics and a lot of character development in there. But you have to, first of all, identify what needs to happen to provide the stepping stone towards the solution so they can do that. And that's what CLB is all about.
So there's a lot of psychology and different other techniques that you are using in your approach. And I know that success engineers has this unique focus, maybe not so unique, but for me, actually focusing on neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, hypnotherapy, and other techniques. How can NLP help someone redefine their purpose and maybe get business idea, maybe achieve a more fulfilling life. Is it possible?
Yeah, it is. The reality is that I take concepts from NLP, pardon me, rather than NLP itself and use them. NLP is one of those amazing tools that can be used for ill or it can be used for great things. But it's just a tool in a tool bag. It's not the only tool. And one of the biggest issues I see with NLP is practitioners using it like Maslow's hammer, the expression to the man with a hammer, everything is a nail. Yeah. It's that forcing the thing in front of you to be a fit when it isn't. So NLP is not the tool for everything. But if it's all you have, then Maslow's hammer. So I tend to look at more of the concepts and the ideas of using language and framing to help people. So taking the best of it, if you like, and coaching that in. And one of the great expressions that came out of NLP that I really love, that I've adopted into my coaching, is the map is not the territory. One of the things that we didn't talk about for somebody relatively new in midlife, looking at a new business venture, changing countries or whatever, is the map is not the territory. What you think is going to happen, the theory, is not what's going to happen. It never is. And the two things that are going to fight you are time and randomness. Things are not going to go the way you expect from a time point of view, and there will always be something random that throws a curveball at your expected happy path. So you have to develop the capabilities, the capacities, if you like, to deal with that. And there are some aspects of obviously CLB, character-led business, and how we coach, but also NLP that can help with that. But the biggest one for me is understanding that what you're stepping into is probably not going to pan out the way you expect. The map is not the territory. The terrain is different from the two-dimensional sheet that you're looking at.
You also often spoken about the concept of tribe within success engineering. Could you elaborate on what this means and how creating sense of community, actually community and support benefit your client?
Okay, so another great question. For me, it's all about community. An entrepreneur alone is an entrepreneur at risk. We can't read the label from inside the bottle, the elusive obvious. There are a lot of solving the wrong problem. People go awry, not on the things that they think, which is the buying a blueprint for business. Here are the 10 steps of successful business. If I just do the 10 steps, I'll be successful. We all know that's not how business works. It doesn't work that way. It's not that the mechanics don't have value, but we have to make the mechanics work. Nobody's going to do that for us. Yeah, that would be like hiring a personal trainer and expecting them to do the press ups for you and sweat for you. It doesn't work that way. Yep. So in this context, we have to understand that setting the environment around us so that we set it up for success to help us get closer to what matters most is critical. And in that regard, that is the amount of advice that we can get, the support that we can get, the help that we can get, the ability to express ourselves and maybe share with other people our own genius and our own brilliance and get some kind of reciprocity, set up a bit of good karma, if you will. That only happens in community, in my experience. So we set up Success Unlocked, which is our community, our success engineers community, to help our guys through the difficult times and to outfox, if you like, some of the kind of curveballs that fate throws at them, but also to celebrate the wins, because the other part of entrepreneurship is most people don't celebrate when things go well. And they also don't celebrate when things don't go wrong, which is another, and we could talk for an hour on that. Setting things up so that your business runs the way it should and your life runs the way it should be celebrated even when nothing dramatic happens, up or down. You don't have to win a gold medal, if you like, and you don't have to hit the pits of hell to be really upset or to be really happy. The reality is, if the business is ticking along nicely and money's coming in and you're enjoying what you do and you're having impact in the world, every so often you should celebrate that. The fact that that is working and working well. People tend not to do that. So we help our people celebrate the big wins, but also the normality. And again, community is great for that.
How you create community? Do you mean online? Or, for example, you relocated recently to Portugal. Does it change something for you? Speaking about community?
Not really. So I have two communities. I have the community I carry around with me, if you like, which is the online community. So Success Unlocked is an online community running on Facebook at the minute. We'll probably be changing that soon enough. And then the offline community, which is the people that I know, the people that I care about, the people that care about me. And a lot of there's a big overlap. Yeah. So I, wherever possible, I like in-person meetings, and I'll do that. And I create events along with Simon where we can bring our people together, because for me there is no substitute for being in the same room with somebody and feeling their energy. But we have the online community, which is my our tribe that I carry with me, if you will. So I have both, and I think both are equally valuable.
Did you find new social circle in Portugal, or you don't need it with all your own communities already created?
Oh, I'm an old fashioned guy. I've been around in the world long before the internet, so in person is my first choice always. So yeah, the answer is yes. I have friends in Portugal. I have friends in Porto. I have friends everywhere. When I was on my Interrail tour last year, I met people in various countries that I'd only ever met online, and we arranged to meet up in their city and have a coffee or have lunch, and it was glorious.
So, what key strategies do you recommend for maintaining resilience, you mentioned, and motivation during personal reinvention and relocation, especially for those who navigating significant life changes at midlife?
Right. That's a lot. Can you just feed me that again? Because that's a heck of a question. I want to make sure I get it right.
Okay, yeah, key strategies. I have this, it's actually a standard question at the end of each interview, providing advice for people who are on the brink of changes. And as you mentioned, it's very important to maintain resilience, motivation for people, especially who do it first time at midlife, coming to the significant changes as relocation or reinvention in professional life direction.
So, how does somebody, essentially summarizing that, how does somebody develop a strategy that's going to lead them to where they want to be if they're midlife and they are, and particularly if they're relocating? Yeah. Okay. So, again, I think we start with clarity. What do you want? What makes you happy? What lifts you up? Where does your sense of purpose come from? What, do you want to have impact in the world? What does that look like? How does that feel? Go to the end of that journey. Stephen Covey, God rest him, a genius man, said, start with the end in mind. I tend to take it a little bit further and say, start at the end. Figure out, envision what the end looks like. What matters most to you? What is success? What does that look like? What does it feel like? Go there, be there, and then come back to where you are. So that's your point X, if you like, where kind of X marks the spot where the treasure is. Figure out what you want. What do you want this to be like? What do you want it to feel like? What kind of experiences do you want? What kind of money do you need for that to work? So what's your number? Yeah. Get all of that dialed in, then come back to where you are, your point A. And now you have A to X, a gap appears. And the job then is to learn how to close the gap. And that's where your strategy comes from. The being at the end, kind of end of the journey, which is really just a horizon, it always moves, gives you a true north. It gives you something to aim at and gives you direction. And where you are gives you a starting point. And then we build our, sorry for mixing metaphors, but we build our kind of yellow brick road, brick by brick. So strategically, you know where you're going, you know why it matters. If you're doing this as a business, you know why that matters to your market, because you need that as well. And now you've got a place to go and something to get, and you begin the journey in the right direction instead of heading off in the wrong direction, which is what most people do. Because again, they just try and monetize their skills and try and earn money and replace the job that they've come from, which is the way of pain for most people. Yeah. So you get strategic by going, okay, where do I want to go? Why does it matter? What does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that have to, in terms of a number, what does that look like financially? Okay, so now I've got that. That's a place to go and something to get. I'm over here. What's the gap? Why does the gap exist? The gap exists because I don't have the skills. I don't have the mentality. I'm not that business owner who can earn that amount of money and have that kind of life. Okay, what do I need to do to become that person, to become that business owner, to create that business? Now we start and to head in that direction. Now we begin to form a strategy, and that's our plan. And then we execute the plan. Nothing, not easy, never easy, but very simple. Is that in any way, shape, or form helpful, by the way?
I'm listening to you and thinking about my personal experience and what you mentioned before. And I would add that you need be flexible enough to discover that what you envision at the beginning, it's not how it will work up in real life. When you relocate, it's conundrum. And you realize that it's not your fault or failure method, that it's normal. It's very hard, by the way, because you had the vision, you put all yourself, and you realize you relocated, it's not what you were prepared to, it's not your vision that you maybe held for a number of years. And now, because all is changing, and lately it's changing so drastically, that you lost at the moment you landed, you found yourself in a new environment, and how to marry this vision with new reality.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But again, we go back to the map is not the territory. What you think will not happen, but you still need to place a place in the distance to aim for, or else you're directionless. So again, remember my vision of point X is it's on a horizon, which means it moves. Yeah. So you head in that direction. One of the mistakes that I think most people make, because most people are not goal driven, they're not target driven, they're challenge driven, is they see people who are goal driven who smash goals and targets all the time, and they think, oh, that's the way, that's what you need. The goal is a fixed place, a fixed thing to go after. But really, for most of us, a goal doesn't set a destination, it sets a direction. So all we're after is, where am I headed? So I'm not going left, I'm not going right, I'm going straight ahead. Great. So how do I stay on the path? And how do I know that I'm moving closer to the thing that I want, even if it keeps creeping away like a horizon? And for me, that's the key. And it starts again with clarity and with understanding that what you think will happen is not what will happen, which is exactly to your point, Emily. And of course, as soon as you move abroad, you understand that it's never what you expect. It never quite works out the way you think. I thought I was going to live in Lisbon, and I've ended up in Porto, and I've got a very different experience from that. I thought I was going to probably retire in Italy. I'm probably going to end up staying in Porto and not retiring in Italy, but staying in Italy and traveling. Again, as you grow, your understanding expands, your preferences change. So it's not just that the territory itself changes, but you change. As there's that old expression, a man visits a river and has an experience. Man comes back to the river 30 years later, it's not the same river. It is, but the man's experience of the river has changed. And that's it. For me, that's the center of it all.
Thank you very much, Dino. And that brings us to the end of today's remarkable conversation with Dino Tartaglia. Dino, thank you for sharing your wisdom, experiences, and strategies. And I believe we will meet again, and you will again enlighten us with new ideas or vision of how to navigate midlife with all changes we have now, geopolitical, economical, social. And I wish that we all will find, we will be clear about where we're going, and we will find the direction and help to navigate this journey, because I know and it's not easy. And thank you again for being with us today.
Absolutely, thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope it was useful for you people, and they get as much from it as I did. I thoroughly enjoyed it, Emily. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dina's journey from an engineer to a business transformation coach is genuinely inspiring. Insights about achieving success and building supportive community will undoubtedly resonate with our listeners. We explored the strategies and philosophies which drive Success Engineers' mission to empower small businesses, and learned valuable lessons from Dino's vast experience. His dedication to helping entrepreneurs focus on the elusive obvious provides a roadmap for real, sustainable business and personal success. For those of you ready to take that first step toward reinventing your life and finding your purpose, remember Dino's advice. embrace innovation, overcome your fears, and connect with your tribe. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, share, and leave a review. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries of what your business and life can achieve, and stay committed to what truly matters most. Thank you for tuning in to Age of Reinvention, Redefine Freedom, Lifestyle, and Purpose at Midlife. I'm your host, Emily Bron, and I cannot wait to share more stories and insights to help you redefine your future. Until next time, keep striving for success and living authentically. Goodbye.